So today we will cover a lot of things about how you what is your story, like how you started the brand, to how you scaled it, what are the main challenges you faced as you scale, and how you actually navigated all of that. So I'll start right at the origin, right? And Aditya, you have a very interesting story where you were doing a job and like you met your co-founders and you just decided to take the plunge. So would love to hear how you decided to start Campus Sutra itself.
So we were four corporate slaves who were related. So we were so all of us were related, and all of us were doing different things. So I was working. I did my MBA working with a software company selling software in Bangalore, and Dheeraj, my co-founder, was working with in retail. So he was with Bharti Walmart. Sonal is one of the one of the gold medalists from was working with Titan and Khulbu. So all of us, happened to be related. Sonal, Khulbu, me are siblings. So we went. So honestly, we were bored in our life because both were in a corporate job. I remember Aniket came to our office and बोल रहा था कि corporate looks like people are walking dead. The environment is something like that. So I think that was our phase also. उसमें लग रहा था कि यार क्या कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे life में. So the idea came in a Goa trip. So all of us wanted to do something, and we were all planned together and wanted to do something. उस time D2C एक word नहीं था. मतलब there was no word D2C existing. 2013-14 में. Nobody knew what D2C was. उस time, जैसे for example, there were Flipkart, Myntra was still doing customization business की. अगर आपको 100 टी-शर्ट चाहिए तो there was Flipkart who was doing books and they were slowly opening galleries. So एक model which was very interesting that time, which was called marketplace model, जो Alibaba करता था इसमें चाइना में. It was a model from the east, and everybody was saying marketplace is the next big thing, marketplace is the next big thing. So we dug out some numbers, and उस दिन हमने मतलब there was this one number and a very big aha moment for us, which we thought was the pivotal moment where we decided कि हाँ मतलब इसी में कुछ करना है. Was they have Alibaba has this 11/11 day, 11th of November. So 2013 में 2013 on 11th November they did $6 billion worth of sales. इंडिया का पूरा e-commerce business 1 billion का नहीं था उसमें. So we thought कि ये इंडिया में तो it is going to happen. We do it, somebody else does it, doesn't matter. कोई ना कोई तो आके करने वाला है क्योंकि we understood that the power of e-commerce and how it is going to take shape in India, because India is usually 10 years behind China. So we thought कि ये बड़ा opportunity है, let's do it. So that's where we thought कि idea सही है, sector सही है, हम सही sector में घुस रहे हैं. Fashion was one that came to us because थोड़ा fashion is a little defensible business. The supply chains are a little complex. बहुत जल्दी स्केल नहीं कर सकते, बट कोई जल्दी तुमको हिला भी नहीं सकता. मतलब फॉर एग्जांपल इट्स अ डिफेंसिबल बिजनेस एक्चुअली है. एंड रोटी कपड़ा मकान, मतलब सिंपल लॉजिक है, मतलब रोटी कपड़ा मकान बिकता ही बिकता है. सो दैट वे वी थॉट कि हाँ ठीक ठाक धंधा है. एंड थर्ड हमें लगा कि जैसे एक टाइम होता है चीजों का. फॉर एग्जांपल विक्टर ह्यूगो सेड दैट nobody can stop an idea whose time is come. So हमें यही लगा कि this is the time for this idea, and this is the right time to start. So we came from complementary skills. I was doing sales, Dheeraj was in retail, Sonal was from a design background, and Khulbu was from investment operations background. She had like a lot of experience in operations. So we thought कि हम चारों सही हैं, we make a good team, and we started. So that's how our journey was. For the name Campus Sutra, it's a little bit of a pun. So हमने 4-5 नाम फाइनलाइज किए कि ये क्या क्या नाम होगा. तो Campus Sutra is a little bit rhyming to some other brand which I don't know what to name, or I can name here also, but yeah, so it sounded cool. And second, GoDaddy.com हो गया था. I think these were two filters we put, and we started Campus Sutra. Awesome. So, would love to hear your origin story as well, right? Like you said, your wife and your sister started this brand, and then like you jumped in. So, how was that journey, right? Of you like leaving? What did you do before this, and how did you kind of take the plunge and start?
Tech and design, a niche shop, but we used to do it for well-funded startups. That was one of the first earlier waves of the couple of companies that we were working with wanted to acquire us. In that journey, we spoke to a bunch of different companies, ended up selling their business. So we exited to Tracto back then, and then worked there for a few years. After that, I traveled for a year. I was just coming back. I was trying to figure out what next to do. Ideally, I would have done something in the tech business, right? But COVID had just started, like a few months later, and Yogabar was primarily an offline business. We had just sort of entered, and we had just luckily been funded by operations. So because your offline sales are completely zero, and this whole thing is there, and so asking like, I think you know some online something, the performance marketing, other you gonna start this bit. So that's how I got involved. So the online bit now makes up about 60 to 70. And all the marketing, so we didn't do any marketing, and whatever marketing as such that we do, or our culture generally today is a very digital first brand. And I would say we are one of the relatively fewer ones which are also properly open channel. We are there in thousands of people. We started this business and we fasting and Nandita started this business because there was just no equivalent of a yoga bar again. They were doing yoga. And then I think Anandita said, if I had a bar, like if I had a bar, it just so happened that she got bored of her corporate life in UI. And she moved to India and she started formulating it and talking to folks how to make it. So Asni had also graduated from Wharton, and they both decided that this is what we will do. And thankfully, at that time, Fireside, which is one of the, I mean, it's a consumer fund out there, and they basically, the fund wasn't started yet because they were on the boards of the same. That's how, so they put in some seed investment. It took some time to back off. It took a few years just to kind of get started on building only bars. That's when we keep doing anything that we can make.
Like very, very excited always to hear the recent stories, right? And both of you guys look I think you exited, but you came directly from corporate life, full on into startup. And the next theme which I wanted to explore is how do you pick that channel to grow, right? Like once you start with that idea, then how do you figure out, okay, this is going to be my growth channel? And I remember you guys were one of the first people to in fact bet on Myntra, which was completely new upstart kind of marketplace at that time, right? Which was not even a legit growth channel, considered to be a proper thing. So would love to understand how did you figure out, okay, this is going to be my channel for growing my startup?
Honestly, like I said, I didn't know that whether we could build a platform or a brand. So we took the call of building a brand business rather than a platform business. So this call we took very early on that हमें एक platform नहीं बनाना क्योंकि there were 25-30 platforms there and there, and a lot of people were building platforms. And we thought we'll build a brand business because I remember there was this brand called Michael. On that 11/11 day, they sold $360 million worth of merchandise. So हमें अलीबाबा नहीं बनना था, हमें बैंकल बनना था, intent यही था. So and we knew that that it is going to be a multi-channel play, multi-strategy play. So I'll give you some stories of when we started and we started approaching these guys. तो हमें क्या response मिला? तो Flipkart for example, हम शुरू में उनके पास गए, वो बोला कि हमें लिस्ट करना है. तो उन्होंने बोला हमारा ऐसा कोई प्रोग्राम ही नहीं है, बाद में बात करते हैं. And 3 महीने बाद they mailed us saying that we're starting this marketplace program, kindly come and fashion खोल दिया या whatever. So that was one experience. Myntra is was a very, very exclusive gated kind of a marketplace then. So it took us 1.5 years to get into Myntra. We had to build our cred on Flipkart, on our own channel, on a lot of other things to get into Myntra. And Myntra में जैसे ही went live, I think it just blew our mind. I remember they had this first end of reason sale. उसमें 2 घंटे में हमारे 13,000 ऑर्डर आ गए. तो मुझे तो समझ में नहीं आ रहा था मैं खुश हूँ या रो, मतलब मेरे पूरे वेयरहाउस में 13,000 पीस थी उस टाइम. So उस टाइम I realized कि this is the power of what e-commerce can do and the sky is the limit. उस टाइम कंपटीशन भी नहीं था, मतलब लोग भी नहीं थे मेरे कैटेगरी में. I was the only guy operating, so life was hunky dory that time. तो वैसा नहीं है. And obviously people have moved to different channels because every 5-6 years this cycle evolves when new things come, disruption happens. So that keeps happening. But I think I entered one at the right time and I entered the right place at the right time. And I think all of us, we make a lot of effort, everybody, all now. But अगर टाइमिंग आपके साथ हो ना तो मतलब आप एफर्ट थोड़ा 19-21 पे करोगे ना तो like you'll do well. So, the best thing that, if you have time on your side, then, things are going to be, that is what I'm a big believer of. कि time अगर तुम्हारे साथ हो ना तो क्या थोड़ा चल जाता है मतलब ऊपर नीचे. So so Myntra I remember, and then there used to be this platform called Yogabar, and Amazon में 2014 पे ही India आया था. So we started with that, and we started with our own D2C also. And that time the competition was very different. There was this company called Zoe. I don't know how many Zoe now. There was this company, Shah Rukh Khan backed company called Yummy. They opened 100 stores and they were doing really well online. So उस time वो हमारे competitions थे. But the sun, a lot of things have changed. Some people did really well over the last 10 years. Some people have, done really well, crashed and burned. But ये cycle चलता ही रहता है. But I think initially the channel mix was very simple for us. हमें e-commerce only करना है. हमें मार्केट प्लेस करना है क्योंकि हमें ये पता था कि इसमें अपॉर्चुनिटी है ज़्यादा. सप्लाई का प्रॉब्लम है rather than demand. Lot of people did not, so they were trying to do customer acquisition, but they didn't have demand. So that was that opportunity to take the business to a level where we have certain volumes, and after that do our own experiments. So this was the strategy that we first kind of launched with and started partnering with these.
So I love that that thing about timing. If timing is on your side, then everything works. It was the same with us. Like we started in COVID, and like everybody wanted to buy on WhatsApp because there were some people who were forced to buy online but never bought online, and they did not even know how to operate a website. And so those people wanted to come, even buy on WhatsApp, get support on WhatsApp, all of that. So that gave us the like crazy amount of push, which now like doing any kind of 3TM like it doesn't get that same amount of thing.
But अब change हो रहा है ना. WhatsApp they are charging 80 पैसे per message, so things are changing quite a bit. Meta also wants to make money.
Exactly. So I wanted to understand from you as well. Like when you joined, a lot of things, most the entire business was offline. So wanted to understand if you can add why they chose that as the main channel. And then during COVID, how did you kind of pivot that whole thing into online? Right? How did you set that up?
So, comparing now the time, but I would say that yes, COVID happened to us, and that also changed the way our works was. But at the same time, we were also doing the same thing for 3-4 years before that, right? So sometimes just hanging in there, that especially I think that message is very relevant today. Just hanging in there, and then you find your next big thing, right? You could be, you can get lucky and start it off at the right time, right? Or you could hang in there and eventually find that time as well. And I think that patience is also there. Timing I can just persevere. And ultimately, there are enough and many businesses which I found that time. Right? So that was that. Now, with respect to COVID and how we kind of pivoted, right? So the thing is, if you are a funded business, your objective is कि इतना ज़्यादा sale top line कर सकते हो, right? That was at least what the mantra was. And when you do that, health food is a relatively small market, right? I have had investors who have told me that Kellogg's as a brand is not big enough for us to invest in. So you become as big as Kellogg's, that's not big enough for us. Which I get, right? Everyone has their own reasons. So if health food is in itself a limited market, so you have to understand if I said, yeah, if I choose to just do offline or if I just choose to do marketplace, I don't have that option. I have to do as many channels as I possibly can. I be in as many categories as my brand will allow me to be in. As just to define and make my market size as large as possible, because that was the challenge that we were facing from a funding perspective, at least. That my TAM has to be as large as possible, which meant I don't have an option. The second bit is growth is oxygen. So when COVID happens, having zero as a revenue number is just not an option anymore for us, right? And we also didn't know kya hoga. I think the harder part was changing the company's culture, right? So you have a bunch of folks who you try to build your offline business very differently. You try to talk about sustainable metrics, or you try to look at personal metrics. What helped us was we sort of started this team completely from scratch, right? So and even today they are virtually, there's almost no interaction between the two different two teams, right? There are monthly catch-ups where senior leaders are there, but apart from that, they run very well. And I think that's it. So, and we took that lesson today when I do my D2C, right, the website, right, and the e-commerce platform. We try to keep them as separated out as possible. And larger companies also do this. If you look at an Amazon per se, they try to keep those pods as independent as possible. You can have a few central functions, but we keep them as independently as possible.
I wanted to ask the same question to you also. Give since you started, like, how did your journey across different channels look like? I remember, like you said, D2C used to be a big channel for you, then you guys had really shut it down as well. You went to offline. So, like, how did your journey look like across these various different channels?
See, like I said, idea was to build a stable business, cash cow, and then D2C and e-commerce were the two channels that we rightly kind of started right off the bat. And marketplace did really well. We were bootstrapped, तो हमें capital efficiency थोड़ा ज़्यादा देखना था. So when we started our D2C business, we reached to about 2,000 orders a day. But like the problem was कि वो ecosystem इतना evolved नहीं था कि एक तो UPI नहीं था. For example, time is different now because the number of COD orders now versus the number of COD orders that you used to get in back in 2014-15 was very different. So you used to almost get 40% RTOs then. Second, social media पे, for example, you had only Facebook as a channel, but Facebook in terms of ACOS was very good for us then. Second, because of being bootstrapped, the kind of team building that we had to do for maintaining a business of that scale was very tough for us. So economically, it was not very viable when it came to doing D2C. Pin codes, we used to only operate in 16,000 pin codes. Abhi the number of pin codes that was COD percentage was almost 85% of the entire order. So we used to pay 70-80 bucks extra for COD. So those were the challenges that we faced initially right off the bat. एक दो महीने हमने मतलब we scaled a lot, but it was not bleeding money, so we had to kind of take a back step there. And we took the way of wherever the most capital efficient business was being built. So we thought कि हमारा marketplace business को हम and then we can explore other channels. So that was D2C. We wanted to go offline because we wanted to have that omni-channel play. So we had three options in front of us when we typically how fashion business go offline is one, they open their own stores. Second, they latch on to other networks. For example, there is large format store, there are MBOs that you can target. And then there is a general trade business which like there are small mom and pop stores that are spread across India. जैसे HUL अपना network बनाता है. वैसे fashion में there are three kinds of network that you can build. दूसरे और तीसरे में पैसा नहीं चाहिए. The first one needs a lot of money because a store is a big capital investment. आदमी एक बार capital investment you can still do, right? But if the store doesn't work, you can't operate it for 2 more years. For example, मैं मारवाड़ी and मारवाड़ी से उसके बाद हर महीने वो 50,000 लॉस नहीं देख सकता. So that is the principle that I used to operate on. कि मतलब एक बार पैसा नहीं लग जाए तो ठीक है, हर महीने का लॉस नहीं दिखा जाए. So it was about capital efficiency for us. So we started our offline business with Shopperstock, Lifestyle, Central, and all of that. So we are at about 400 locations in India with them. They carry us across the year. And we have our general trade business in about 7 states. So we built offline, and then we went international. So for example, we are operating in about 22 countries. We do a mix of offline as well as marketplace business there, where we operate in a country, we build inventory there, and then we kind of distribute through capital efficient channels. So that's how our channel strategy or our online strategy has been. Since 2020, we have done a D2C 2.0 where we have scaled tremendously in our D2C. The difference between what I see in 2014-15 versus now is that our COD order is only 35%. We do 65% prepaid. We service 30,000 pin codes. Our RTOs are 12%. Our returns are 4%. And the only thing that has changed is ROAS बढ़ गया है. ROAS is doubled. But everything else in the math is making so much sense that the numbers are really scaling. And I think we are almost at 12-13% of the business of D2C. I think by next year this number will be 25%. So I mean that's how it has evolved for us. थोड़ा I harp on timing a lot, but मेरे को लगता है कि इसमें भी ना after COVID I think some things have changed. One, people have taken e-commerce like fish to water after COVID because offline था नहीं तो बहुत सारे लोग जो offline नहीं खरीदते थे they have come. So they have transacted. So usually a journey of any user in India in e-commerce is first they view objectionable sites. Second, they generally browse. Third, they buy an IRCTC ticket. And that is their first transaction. And then they kind of move on to commerce, right? कोविड ने पूरा जो जर्नी था ना वो मतलब 2 महीने में सबको करवा दिया मतलब लार्ज चंक ऑफ इंडिया एंड with demonetization, UPI, I think all of this was building till COVID, and somehow it was a culmination of those factors which really opened up D2C as a channel. And I think if somebody was hanging around like Aditya said कि 2-3 साल 18 में कोई फैशन ब्रांड शुरू किया और 20 तक हैंग अराउंड कर गया and then started D2C in a big way would have really made done really well in 2021 and 22. So once you are big enough, obviously you can do a lot of other things. But थोड़ा timing का था, and then this D2C 2.0 is also helping me, benchmark against what things were earlier to now. So I think that's been the journey. And we always believe in a multi-channel approach. I think the 2 levers that I'm going to really focus on next year is one, the D2C business, and second, the international business, and see where it goes from.
So Aditya, for you, I had a different question about brand scaling, especially about what that brand means and what kind of products you also make. Because you started as a very high-end kind of protein brand, which was targeted. Effectively, it was started with the idea of what was being done in the US, right, and selling that to people like who are really health conscious in India. So how did this scale when you reached the mass market, when you started selling in the tier 2 cities? How did those people how did you build this and maintain that same kind of brand in front of that audience?
I think the first realization here is that health is not just for people who are very fitness conscious. I think there are a lot of people who have these very short, perhaps, phases where they feel that I will eat something a little bit healthier today, right? All of us have gone through it. So if you look at the ideal TG or actually the actual TG that we have, it's not really a bunch of folks who are going to the gym every day. It is really just people like all of us. For us, right, the challenge really is that we as a brand aspire to be a bit more premium to whatever that already exists. At the same time, we also operate in a food category, which is muesli I'm talking about. I'm not talking about bars because they are frankly too niche, right? So if you look at a muesli in the processed food spectrum, right? When we talk about staples, and then you will say this is usually this is determined by the price per kilo of food that we are selling. So muesli is quite high up. So even like a brand like Kellogg's tends to have a higher gross margin than what other brands do. Maintaining the positioning is very difficult, but we have tried to do that just for a lot of brand building activities that we do on Instagram, right? We try to position ourselves in some way or the other as more fashion related than as food person related. But there is no denying the fact that if you are a bit more expensive price, and in India a bit more can even be 10 rupees, you are always going to have a smaller time. Like that is the thing, and that is a reality that we live. The question then is, do you enter more categories or not? Does your brand support it? Does your overall exit strategy 5 years, 10 years down the line support it? Those are the questions to ask, and those are the things that we used to ponder. But there is no denying the fact that if you're building a premium brand in many segments, I don't know about all segments, because health food itself is still a limited segment compared to if you're selling biscuits, right? So that's the challenge that we face, and there is really no denying it. There is absolutely, the TAM is defined by how many people can really afford you. You can maintain your premium positioning, I think, because there are many people here, and perhaps everyone here can have a premium positioning if they choose to. The real question to ask is, am I okay with that TAM or not? And it just so happens that I cannot build or make health food if I'm not more expensive. Others use maida, which is cheaper, right? I use more almonds, I use dates. Those inherently make the product more expensive. We are not premium actually by choice. We are forced to be premium by the cost of the products that we have. In an ideal world, as a business person, I would build a little bit more.
Aditya, you also talked about international right before this. right? And I think I just want to continue on that side of growth, right? That like, why did you? What was the point where you decided to go international? How does one even think about that sitting in India? And how does one understand those customers? Understand how the same products or the same brands can be built there, and like how does one actually start selling there successfully?
We keep doing a lot of experiments. To go very deeply into this, I think we did a small experiment in Dubai, which is a market which is very close to how India operates, right? So our first experiment was in Middle East and Dubai, and we basically uh, understood the market a little bit, and then experimented sales there, and it did really well. So based on that experiment, we did another market, we did Europe there, and to be honest, we sell जो इंडिया में 700 रुपए में बिकता है वो यूरोप में 50 रुपए में बिकता है. But you need to get to the right channels, you need to get to the right place to sell them. So we eventually found the right place in Europe. It takes about a couple of years to kind of get it right, but if you kind of keep at it, experiment करते रहो, देखते रहो, छोटे experiments करो, scale it. I think that has been our mantra. One more thing is, and I'll tell you difference between different markets. We tried in Southeast Asia, but we failed. And उसका मेजर रीजन क्या था कि साउथ ईस्ट एशिया इज अ सप्लाई बेस्ड मार्केट. वहां पे जो बिकता है वो वहीं बनता है. Whereas दुबई, यूएस, यूरोप, these economies don't have a production or a supply based economy. मतलब वहां पे कुछ प्रोडक्शन होता नहीं, तो जो भी बनता है वहां पे whatever is selling there is either being made in China or India, and people do a very good job of marketing and sell there, right? That's fundamentally what is happening in these markets. And with India, I think because we have an advantage with respect to Chinese that we understand English, the language, very well. And all of us, because of our education system, have a fair and good idea about marketing, design, aesthetics. So if you get a good person who does good design in India and understand the market and benchmarks against some US brands, you can do a decent job of marketing for the US and Europe based out of India. Whereas somebody, if you hire from the US to do marketing for you, I mean, utna to aapka first year ka revenue. So, I mean, that's the difference. So we did a little bit of, we did small experiments where we hired people from here. Whatever could be done from here, we did from here. There we had an office, there we had an inventory, but जो भी संभालना था, customer care, जो भी करना है, वो हम यहीं से करते हैं. And this is how we went small, and then we slowly built that business. Usually, technically, एक market में हमें 2-2.5 साल लग जाता है, थोड़ा business model set करने में समझते हैं. But I think, this decade is going to be India's decade. One domestically. Second, I think the push of manufacturing that is happening in India. I think India is going to be the manufacturing hub of the world in the next, because China is moving to a higher AI based or tech based manufacturing. So India product manufacturing में do really well. So India से बहुत product world class बनने वाला है, manufacturing infrastructure set होगा. So I think it's a good time kind of, and I think next 5-10 global brands India से मतलब आराम से I think 50 global brands in the next 10 years बन सकते हैं India से. So this is our attempt to kind of figure out. And अभी हमें ऐसा लगता है कि हमने foundation बैठा लिया. There is a foundation of international business when it comes to Campur Sutra, and we are trying to plug products into that ecosystem or the supply chain that we've built, and we are seeing tremendous results for different products, different product categories. So it's a learning process, and I think we didn't go big from the beginning. I think we did small experiments and then scaled as we learned. I think that's the reason why we were able to be successful in some of the markets that we.
But so it was a lot about experimentation, but wanted to understand a little bit more, because like a lot of brands, like they are looking to go international, and so which channels does one start with? How does one understand the customer, right? Like even experimentation, like which direction do you go ahead with? Do you do B2C, or do you just start listing on a marketplace there, and like how do you really position your brand and understand your customer persona as well?
You should go by your strengths. I think inherently a brand needs to understand it. Team needs to understand it. what are you good at? So if you're good at creating content, if you're good at branding, packaging, then D2C is the way. If you are good at channel management, if you're very good at unit economics, good at scaling up things, Amazon might be the way. So एक अपना inherent strength से भी you need to figure out what you're good at and then target it, because tradition India I think is a in terms of tech and in terms of operations, I think India is ahead of the world. Even in terms of Europe, I think the e-commerce tech in India and the stack that we have built, I think we are way ahead of what US and Europe use. For example, the payment that we get from US comes to our Indian account in 6 days. इंडिया में मतलब आज मैं आपको पेमेंट करूंगा तो आई थिंक 2 सेकंड में पहुंच जाएगा. सो वेनमो इज एन ऐप जो मतलब एक दिन में पेमेंट कर देता है एंड पीपल आर गोइंग क्रेजी अबाउट इट इन यूएस. सो द स्टैक are way ahead, at least 5-7 years ahead of what tech stack is being used, except maybe Amazon. I think Amazon uses the same tech stack, but बाकी सबका tech stack बहुत पुराना है. So I think we have an arbitrage when it comes to marketplace or e-commerce tech stack. Just for example, companies like you or enablers, I think we have a very very healthy ecosystem of enablers in India. So any idea that you have, you need to play to your strengths. If you're good at creating good campaigns, good content, I mean, PPC should be your way. So plug into your strength. And second, I think in terms of marketing as well as in terms of tech, I think India is far ahead. I think so we should take advantage of that.
So in the next part of the talk, I would want to move towards finance, the financial bit also of startup, and start with you because you have there are two completely different sides of the coin which we will see. And so you have raised funds, I think at least two rounds before then exiting to ITC, right? So I wanted to understand your mentality about like what kind of metrics do you monitor and how do you build so that you are able to raise successfully, and especially what does it take at the end to exit to a large company?
Can you talk about the international bit also a bit, because I think it's quite different. So I think international also really depends on the category that you are in, right? I think for tech, SaaS, many of those, I think the TAM in India is very different from the TAM abroad. In which case, I would strongly it's definitely something to do, right? That's what I think. But there are many categories where the TAM in India is very, very high. And if you are still then planning on going abroad, I think it requires a lot of focus. It requires a lot of things to be done differently, especially if you're building a brand. If you have a brand that is inherently big in India, does not mean that your brand is also big in the US. You have to build that again from scratch, and it is equally expensive. So at least, I would say at least hit some scale in India if you have the right amount of time before you want to kind of go there. And I think that's what you also did, right? Of course, do those experiments, like even we do those experiments, right? But be very clear, like, are you going to the US or other countries because of TAM, because of margins, because of your inherent strengths? That is something worth figuring out, because India itself is a very large market for many different things. And I think figuring that bit out is the key part. Otherwise, even when you're looking at exits or fundraising, being present and doing too many things is might not necessarily be looked as very favorable. Right. On the second bit of how do you raise, right? I think the market's very different from back then when we were raising, right? And that time it really was get top 10. What I would, however, say that especially if the consumer focused companies here is, first of all, be very sure of what is it that you need the money for, right? There's been over the last few years and maybe longer, there's this thing that funding in itself is something to be celebrated. I think raising a lot of money inherently creates a lot of pressure and forces you in certain directions, which does not necessarily match with what you might want to do or how the situation or circumstances change. I think that understanding is key. Understand that is funding necessarily needed for your business. For example, in a consumer food, like the kind of business that I am in, raising a lot of money is unlikely to actually make a lot of sense, because, and I say this, you cannot necessarily put rocket fuel into a cycle and expect it to fly, right? So understand, by putting in more money into your business, will the business scale? I think that's the first question to really answer. We don't talk enough about it. And I think that's the most important bit. But today, what I am seeing, the companies that we fund or being unit economic profitable is quite important, right? And ultimately, it really boils down to that these days. The market's tight, I think, we all know. But I think fundamentals of businesses are being valued far more from whatever that I'm seeing in the market. Thankfully, I am not in that area. But yes.
Got it. So it's back to fundamentals now. Earlier it was about top line, now it is again having a very healthy bottom line. And I wanted to understand from you, like you over the last 9, 10 years, you have maintained this entire growth internationally and various channels, various brands as well, while being bootstrapped, right? So what kind of practices do you follow? What kind of crazy stuff do you have to do, right, to remain profitable and be like so that you can grow in a bootstrap way?
I've seen this cycle like the Yogabar, every 7 years the cycle comes. So I've seen the previous cycle when it left me scarred. So I personally thought ki if till the time I don't need to raise, matlab, I will not. Then that was one fundamental thing. Because then you can run the company the way you want. I think that's very important. Uh, and and honestly, Levi's, for example, is a 1,200 crore business in India. तो फैशन का एक क्लास सीलिंग है इंडिया में. सो इफ आई गो टू समबडी एंड टेल हिम दैट मैं 5,000 करोड़ का ब्रांड बना लूंगा, तो वो मैं अपने आप को भी झूठ बोल रहा हूँ, मैं उसको भी झूठ. लाइक ही सेड, आई थिंक टाइम देखना है तुमको. लाइक आई थिंक 4-5 years ago, 3-4 years ago, we were not investable. I also didn't think I was investable because I was playing that 300-500 crore game, right? So you have to have that vision. Where do you want to be, or what is the what is your end goal? So, for me, the philosophy has been simple. Till the time I don't need to raise, I don't. Obviously, if I look at an IPO and I need to work around before that, I would obviously, shed that and do something like that. But the idea has always been that. And it's tough. So, every time I used to think कि थोड़ा पैसा होता है. Plus last year बहुत difficult था. बहुत पैसा आ रहा था. इसको मना करना भी tough होता है. So that was a phase where everybody was on an acquisition spree. Everybody was wanted to put money but on a crazy valuation. But I don't know. अभी भी पता नहीं वो सही किया गलत किया. But that is how it happened. But it's been a tough journey. But मेरे को लगता है कि entrepreneur का काम value create करना है with the amount of resources that he has. So even if I was limited in one way. I found different ways to kind of make sure कि I found different ways to kind of make that thing reach the same goal. It took me a little bit more time. It might have taken me a little bit more convincing, but I did it. For example, I tell everybody that मेरा पहला ऑफिस कोई haunted building में था. तो actually था MG रोड पे एक बिल्डिंग है which is haunted. उस ऑफिस में 400 स्क्वायर फीट मेरे को 8,000 रुपए में मिल रहा था. उसके बाजू वाली बिल्डिंग में 50,000 का. मैं उनके साथ आई थिंक कि आत्मा को परमात्मा बना के बैठ रह लेते हैं. एंड वी वर 4-5 people एंड वी वर सिबलिंग्स. तो साथ में उधर बैठ के काम करते थे. तो एंड इट वाज अ खंडर. तो कोई सप्लायर भी आता था देखने के लिए, तो उसको ऐसा लगता कि कहाँ बैठे हैं लोगों को, तो 10 रुपए का उधारी भी नहीं दे सकते. सो वो थोड़ा जर्नी है. आई थिंक दैट हैपेंस, बट देन यू लर्न हाउ टू काइंड ऑफ squeeze every buck that you have. So for example, we've done movie integration with zero cost. We've done celebrity integration with almost like negligible. अगर वो 100 रुपए कोट करते थे, हम 2 रुपए देते थे. So you learn that as you go. But there is no right way or wrong way. I would say that everybody builds businesses, and some businesses are inherently businesses which need money. So for example, tech businesses. I would say that to reach a critical mass, to reach a to build a minimum viable product, you will need money. But product businesses inherently, मेरे को लगता है कि there are 2 ways to build it. Either you do it like you build very fast, 2-3 साल में बहुत लंबा, build a very good top line and kind of do, and then if you make that business efficient and build bottom line, or you take the longer journey of 7-8 years. I read something very recently कि companies which last 20 years build 90% of the value in the second 20 years, 10 years. So मेरे को get motivated me a lot. मुझे 10 साल तो हो गए, अब 90% वैल्यू में अगले 10 साल चेस कर रहा हूँ. I think that is something that keeps me motivated.
I wanted to ask you the completely different side now. Now that you have been like almost integrated into IDC or become at least a big a part there, right? So I wanted to understand how does life change as a founder after you get acquired, and like what how does ITC even run in terms what kind of practices happen? Are there any good practices which like growing brands can learn from a company like ITC as well?
Yeah, I would be very arrogant to assume that I can't learn from the. Just to give you context, ITC has many businesses. Just the food business does did 17,000 crores of revenue in 9 months. Right? I'm not talking about multi-billion dollar valuations. I'm talking about. I find it extremely fascinating how do you build. There are many things that of course are like, but seeing the processes and most importantly seeing the kind of people that they have. You know, at startups, the usual tenure of someone could be 2 years, right? There people are lifers. It's like a private Sarkari company. And I find that very fascinating how you build a culture wherein you get people from the top schools of the country and they stay there for 40 years of their career. I find that extremely fascinating. And I try to learn from it, whatever way. That being said, we're very independently run. We have regular board meetings and we have a couple of implants, so to speak, from their team that help us integrate with the supply chain. Right? We get some help on better processes, right? We get some help on their technology, how to make products a certain way. We definitely leverage the supply chain. But how has life changed is, you know, I mean, there's always this insecurity that exists. Yeah, what's really going to happen to your startup, no matter wherever you are, right? You could be a unicorn and you could be worried that something will happen to you tomorrow. And so that like, worry is not there, right? And that's frankly a very big difference in the quality of life. As an entrepreneur, you all know how difficult that is. It's a very, very big difference. But apart from that, yeah, काम बढ़ी है, right? Because they've also put money, there are growth expectations, and most importantly, so there's much of work, but there is a sense of relief, and there is also what I was thinking is that I know that the brand that we have built is going to outlive me. A good purpose to kind of keep doing whatever I want to keep saying. कि मुझे पता है कि ultimately they're going to make this far larger than what I have been able to make it. But I want to be part of that story.
The other part apart from money is the legacy part, which is actually like a bigger reason why we are all doing it. So that is great to hear. You feel that even if it gets acquired. Awesome. So we are at the end of our time. So I would just like to keep it to one last question. So in the last 10 years of you running a brand, right? Like what are the top three learnings that you have had?
So when times are hard, I think just persevere. I think बहुत ऊपर नीचे आता है. So the more difficult it is right now, I think the better it will be when you are at your happiest. I think it's the ebb and flow of business. So go once and wait. For me, since I was running a bootstrap business, I think unit economics, financials, numbers, I think those were very important. So कोई भी decision I used to take, it used to be like very numbers, profitability based. I think that was my Bible, and I kind of do that. Third, team, like team को energy देना बहुत important होता है. So for example, even if you're feeling low, you need to sometimes, be the energy of the team. So so for example, if you walk into the office and if you are magnanimous always, for example, if you have the same energy, if you have the same kind of face to your employees and the team that is working with you, I think they derive a lot of security from that. So I think मेरे लिए भी वो learning था. शुरू में I used to get very emotional, कभी गुस्सा बैठा था, कभी किसी से argument कर लेता था. First 2-3 years, I had to tone down that a bit. I had to become like, even if like मेरे सामने कुछ मतलब बहुत major हो जाता तब भी मैं मतलब I keep on a straight face so that people around me don't think जैसे कुछ खराब चल रहा है, and if you're tensed and it's in front of people, so they will start feeling insecure कि यार मेरी job तो नहीं चल रही है. So I think as a founder, I think you have to be like a still water. ज़्यादा मतलब वो नहीं करना चाहिए. मतलब you can't show your emotions too much. If you have to praise someone, praise in front of everybody. If you have to shout at someone, take him to the room, shout. मतलब वो basic चीज़ है, but you need to keep a consistent face in front of your team every day. These are three things that.
So I'll talk about what I think are three things I wish I knew. So the first thing is this is my second startup, and I mean they keep telling you how difficult it is, and I still don't know. I still might do something again, but just that sheer realization of how hard this gets, and knowing that this too shall pass, right? I think, and knowing that it is inevitable, it is going to be worse than whatever that you expect this journey to be, right? And of course, there'll be highs and lows, but the lows are lower than what you imagine them. So I think that's one, right? Like the realization that this is a very tough path, especially if you're a venture back, that you're kind of trying to embark on upon yourself. The second bit is understanding the sort of the macroeconomics of it, right? What is the category that you want to enter? Is it VC fundable or not? Do you want VC money? Is this business better built if you're bootstrapped? What are the implications of taking money? What is it that a VC wants to hear? What is it that a strategic wants to hear? Are you building for IPO? What does that mean from a business perspective? And all of them have very, very different answers. And unfortunately, that's not something that is easily available to know. Yeah, market may, this is what a VC wants to hear, this is what a strategic wants to hear. These are the implications of a Series A that you have taken now that you will know 5 years later. So that's something that I think is very, very important. And the third one, so this one is a bit more common, but I think hiring the best team that you can. And by best, I don't necessarily just mean that at the very least, recognizing that these are the people who can scale as the organization scales. So when you hire those people, ensuring that your core group is the same set of people that will also be there at the end of 7 years. And if you see that your organization is growing and the same people are not growing, you really need to reevaluate the kind of organization that you're building, because you really cannot build a very large scale organization if you don't have people with a lot of history and context.
For me, it was really interesting that both of you stressed a lot about the team learnings and in the other questions as well. And that is one big thing which we have also learned in the very short journey which we have done till now. But thanks a lot both of you for sharing all of your insights. And if there are any other questions from the audience, if anybody wants to ask follow-ups on any of their answers, please go ahead. And then we'll wrap up and like, go start it in.
You know, ironically, DMart has extreme confidence that it will be your most profitable DMart account. I don't ask you how much most profitable means, but DMart is a profitable account for us. I'll tell you why. Because they don't take listing fees. What they expect is to give you the best possible pricing, and they fund part of the pricing, at least for us. I can't speak for all brands. And they do that, and we run very good offers there, of course, as many other brands do. It's not very profitable, but that account is profitable. Because there are no advertising fees there. They're selling your products as discounted as we possibly can.
What was it difficult for you?
Very difficult. I would say cracking it is such hard, very hard. Even today, I mean, a few days ago, we were there in their office and just trying to convince them, yeah, they got product list low, take low, please. It's tough, but I think I've spent there for to ask me to stand.
Any other questions? Okay, that's awesome. Looks like it was a
Nice
long
and great.
Yeah.
Really awesome.
So that's really great. Thanks for being a great audience and thanks again to you guys. That's our answer.